Hello. Alright, so we are live. Currently in the process of a small experiment. Because today, when swapping out the battery on my camera, it fell onto the work surface here. So right next to the flower, the light might be able to just catch the tiniest little bit of a reflection. You'll see a little water droplet over there. Yeah, you can see a little bit of light right there. So I'm going to just do a test and see if the water will help soften the fibers a little bit, just by letting it sit, and we'll see if it'll plump up a little bit. So it's worth a try before I wind up laying down any washes over there and just see where that gets to. So I want to say hello and welcome. I'm so glad you joined me today. And let's see, we have a few changes going on in Wonderland. I have a couple little details here and there that I started really dialing in order to go ahead and get ready for today's prompt. Today's prompt is clock. And the clocks that we're doing we'll actually do two. Finish up the details on the pocket watch for the white rabbit, as well as this grandfather style clock over here. Which, just refreshing the stream manager on Twitch, just so I can make sure everything looks like it's going smoothly here. Okay, so that looks good. Swapping back over to my live camera so I can see what's going on here. Right, and I have this big fuzzy right there. Alright. So, what's going on in Wonderland right now? We have minor adjustments on the tower, because it was a little bit lopsided. I think it's mostly straightened as far as I can adjust with the Jabberwock already being there. So this little edge needs to come out just a touch further. But anyways, so that's been adjusted. I still need to adjust this side. This side's a little bit off. But anyway, added in the verticals for the checkerboard, so we have our secondary vanishing point back here in the woods, this little dot behind the Tweedles, as well as a vanishing point right here on the edge of the paper itself. So went ahead and did some 2-point perspective there in putting in our checkerboards. I adjusted the arch a touch because that was a little out of skew. It's still a little out of skew, but it's better than it was. Improvements is what I'm going for, since these are not the prompt currently. I went ahead and started on some of the rose detail, because tomorrow's prompt, I believe, is roses. Or at least it is rose. I still have to work out the rest of this vine. I got it started, but didn't have quite enough time to finish it, since I didn't have to do too much as far as drawing for today's prompt, because this grandfather clock was already blocked in previously. And really I just need to add the rest of the detail up the top. And I was going with a kind of a finial design. Just figuring out what I want to do. I think we'll do like a ball, followed by an oval, followed by like a little finial type top. Which was not square at first. That's okay, we can adjust. If it doesn't go right the first time, you can always erase it, which is why I do stuff in pencil first. I'm going pretty light as far as introductions to Wonderland, because after I lay in some paint here, going to be hopping around a little bit more, trying to add like finishing details where I can. I do actually need to work on kind of like a door here. That's the main thing that this pendulum had been missing. Grandfather clock had been missing. Before I go ahead and add the pendulum in. Just have that over here, off to the side, and that should be good. Alright, so seeing what else. I have not really done anything on this side of Wonderland today. I might lay in a little bit of the wash around the keyhole while we're working on the grandfather clock, as that's getting developed to be a little bit more cohesive in our world of Wonderland. Or I might work on the March Hare. The March Hare is a later prompt, but my big push at the moment, other than meeting the prompts every day, is to go ahead and have all the faces mapped out, to know where the faces are. And that's so I can go ahead and blot in the background, because I want to do some really crazy color splashes to add to the random nature that is Wonderland. So the paint splatter I will probably readjust my mount for the camera to just move it forward onto my lap because I would feel more comfortable doing the splashing from there. That's kind of an experiment for a future stream, so I'm hoping that I'm like 1 or maybe 2 days away from that. Because I really want to get to a point where all of Wonderland is coming together, because right now it is a lot of disparate elements and it hasn't been unified quite yet. I have similarities as far as color palettes and things like that, but that is not quite the same as what my goal is to go ahead and bring everything together. Right, I'm trying to soften that a little bit. Alright, I'm fiddling. The main reason for that is because these clocks should be really fast for detail. I have so many little bits of strays, and I need to make sure I'm not getting that water drop. I want that to sit and soak in. Get some of this stray pencil from around this rose. I know today's a little bit more random as far as Wonderland. I am still working on thoughts for the future of this channel, both on Twitch and YouTube, and that's up in the air for the moment. So I'm not going to talk about future projects much yet. I'm hoping within the next day or two I'll have a little bit more information and some details can be nailed down by that point. Right now I'm kind of drawn to sharpening up some of these details. I know I'm kind of all over the place because I want to work on any details that I can bring forward as I'm thinking of it, and right now this sign is like the thing that has drawn my attention. I expect that a couple of our streams, you know, as we get closer to the end, are going to be, like I said, a little bit more random. Just trying to find that happy medium of, you know, these are the details that I want, these are the details that I need to work harder to get to be present. So I hope you'll forgive me with this being a little bit less structured than usual. Sure, that looks like it is pointing that way. Right now it looks like the plane is twisted for this particular sign and I don't like it. So what can I do to fix it? I can fix it this way. That looks better. I'm just working on fixing the post portion. I really should bring in a straight edge to fix some of these edges. When I was correcting the checkerboard area, I actually just grabbed an envelope. It's like, hey, junk mail, serve a purpose for me. But yeah, I went ahead and did a little bit of today's drawing session away from my desk, so that was an interesting change. I don't know where this one is pointing. This one's heading towards the beach. And I am blanking on names of areas in Wonderland. That's alright. I'm going to move into just grabbing the prompt list now. And I'll be able to talk about that more as we're going. And make sure that I'm not losing my mind. So we have roses, the March hare, dodo bird, frog footman, mushrooms, talking flowers, and then your choice, or the prompts that are still yet to come. Yeah, that sign's not coming to me. So I'm going to leave that alone. I don't remember what that one was about. Alright, so I sharpened that up a little bit. Yeah, I'm liking that a lot more. It's just this middle sign, I don't remember where that was heading to. So I'm going to leave that alone for the moment, since I have no idea where I was going. Right. Kind of like, alright, where am I at now? I should be painting. That's what I should be doing. I should be painting. Stray eraser bits. And pencil lines. Okay. The clock's blocked in pretty well. I don't have a face designed on this pocket watch, so I need my paper towel. Handy dandy little paper towel. I have no idea what time it is in Wonderland. Alright, and I'm going to work on the grandfather clock first. That makes the most sense. Because that has far more detail left to do than the pocket watch. So we'll get to lay in some washes over there. I think... let's see... I think I'm going to start with the number 6. I'm sorry, number 8 round. This is the, pretty much the standard round that I've been using, since most of my stuff is a pretty small scale. Let's see, a good wood tone. I'm going to work on our... well, I shouldn't say our, but my favorite neutralizing pair. Oh, actually, that's not accurate. This isn't my favorite neutralizing pair. This is my second favorite neutralizing pair. I just wind up using this one more often. My favorite neutralizing pair is actually Pyrrole Crimson with Phthalo Green Blue shade. You get an amazing color range out of that. If I have that over here, I'll go ahead and bring it up. I'm really not liking the palette sitting right there on that edge. So I'm parking it off here on the side. So it feels like it's intruding on where my hand would rest. So that's not good. I feel like the music's a little bit louder. I think it was just that trick. I'm adjusting my inline mic volume. It looks like I'm still quite a bit louder than the music, so we should be good there. I've been noticing that I was overcorrecting on the music for a little bit there, where you really wouldn't hear it unless you put the video up at like full volume. So that's been been a little bit of an awkward adjustment for me. But yeah, I'll show you more about the phthalo green blue shade and Pyrrole Crimson mix in just a moment. I think I have that on one of those swatch sheets I was showing you last time. And I am basically just doing a thin wash over the whole thing. So this is my second favorite neutralizing pair. Yeah, Quinacridone Burnt Orange and Indanthrone Blue. We're going to go with brass for the clock pendulum. I'm so happy for a simpler prompt today, because I'm hoping that this will help me move into getting a lot of those other little details done. I have a little bit of a graphite line here on this edge. I'm just widening this section out just a touch. It still feels a little uneven. I think this side wound up a little bit wide. So I'm just trying to build out this side. Oh, I went too far. Went way too far. Alright. That's okay. So here is what you would call a mistake, but I'll even zoom in on my mistakes because it's a great learning opportunity. So I'm not going to freak out about this. At this point, you can see the bottom edge of the grandfather clock is way further out than it should be. I was trying to just widen it a touch to go ahead and meet the finial, so that way it looked more like it was being supported. And instead, my brush curved out a little bit too far. I went too far with that wash. I'm going to adjust the foot down here a little bit. But I'm not worried about this being an accident, because when the roots go in, I'll have a darker value behind this with the rabbit hole. So this will be all like really deep, earthy dirt. And that's going to hide that little edge as long as I take my time and work on that slowly, which I didn't put a whole lot of things in the rabbit hole because I didn't want it to be too cluttered. I might go ahead and throw in like one more random object just visually, but as far as the prompts, we only have 2 items there until it gets down to this abstract section for the keyhole. Which, while I'm waiting for that wash to go ahead and dry so I can go ahead and start adding the brass from the pendulum, I'll go ahead and lay in a wash for the keyhole. I'm just grabbing a bit of Quinacridone Gold. Go over my red line work that I did. I believe that was with the Quinacridone Red, because it is a little bit more transparent than the Pyrrole Red and Pyrrole Purulene Maroon that we have going on with this curtain. And that wash where I softened this edge has dried nicely, so that's been corrected pretty well. I still need to adjust this lower part of the curtain a little bit, but that's a wash for another day. This I'm going to do, even though I have the number 8 brush wet already, I'm going to just grab my other 8 round. This is the really cheap one that I mentioned that gets beat up, and I tend to use it for a lot of randomness. Ooh, we got a hair. Alright, after I get the hair out of this brush, I'm just going to lay down a little bit of a water wash. I want this to go ahead and fade a bit into the background. Hopefully I haven't been too sloppy with that. Oh, hey, got another hair in this wash. is the most annoying thing sometimes. I'm going to go back over this with another layer of water because this paper is just soaking that wash out. And I don't want this to be like a high gloss area, but I do want it to have just a little sheen. So that way this paint's going to travel a little bit. I'm going to be a little more stingy with the pigment on this side of the keyhole because I don't want it to just run off the page. I want it to be like a subtle transition there. Alright. I have a little bit of puddling going on at the bottom, so at this point I am hopping over to the paper towel and just blotting that a little bit. Alright, so we should be good. I can see just a little bit of a sheen, which is about where I wanted that for this wash. The strength of the Quinacridone Gold is not the strongest it could be, but it's also not the weakest. We want to come right up over that here. Just kind of letting the pigment do its own thing. I know that some of this area we're going to go back over with probably Sepia or some of the Andanthrone and Quinacridone Burnt Orange mix. Either one of those. I'm going to soften this edge, because that does not seem to be spreading as much as I'd like. This is spreading nicely, I'm happy with that. I'm going to bring it down a little bit here. It looks like I'm just going to wet my brush and then soften these edges, since the pigment's not quite going where I want it. So quick rinse, good blot. I'm going to take off most of the water. I want barely anything on here. Just to go ahead and soften this whole edge. It's kind of softening the edge, kind of blurring the edge of this pigment. I'm gonna make sure that that looks good. Jeez, I got this one hair. It keeps finding its way back in here. Great, hopefully that's got it now. This bottom edge is not as soft as I want either. Which is funny because I had so much pigments in there a second ago. Alright. Now it's a little bit too soft here. Trying to find that happy medium. Alright, so I grabbed a touch more pigment. Let's go ahead and put that back down here. I want this to blend out, but I don't want it to be too strong. It's just that weird little in-between spot. I think that should work. And that does need a stronger glaze over here. So I'm going over this edge, just a little bit darker, with the Quinacridone Gold. I'm going to add some more contrast here, but I also want to make sure that I've glazed enough over this red that it's going towards a nice rich orange hue. That's looking better than it was, so we're going to leave that alone to dry. That's feeling pretty dry, but I'm going to wait a little bit longer before we jump back over there, because I want to lift up a touch more of the pencil where that pendulum is, because I'm going to do that a fairly pale color well, brass isn't Yeah, I'm going to be laying down translucent washes, so I don't want so much graphite sticking in there. So I'll give that another few moments before we start adding any shading or detail over there. And I'm just gonna check over on Twitch. You know, as always, you're welcome to go ahead and comment any questions, concerns, jump into the conversation here. And I don't know why that's not updating, but anyways, moving on. Just sliding our piece over. You can see, I don't know if it's the same hair that I keep chasing around. I hope it's another one. Trying to skim that off. Right, and today... there's another one. Alright. So, getting back to our white rabbit. I may need to pan my camera around a little bit. And finish getting the white rabbit close enough in view. And for this, since there's so many itty-bitty details in the area that we have left, what I'm doing is I'm going in with the 18/0 spotter by Princeton Velvet Touch. And see if my camera will focus there. Go. And this is going really strong in the neutral tint pigment. Decided to go with that because of wanting this to be slightly on the cool side, because it's through glass and I have that being slightly bluish. And I don't have quite enough water in my mix here, so wetting the brush again, going back into the pigment again. Make sure that I have enough moisture for this to flow pretty well. I'm going to do just the tiniest bit of trying to make the hand seem like it was decorative. I'm adding kind of like broader points and slightly curling out the ends. Not sure how well that is getting picked up. And then I'm kind of going to do what we did with the kind of what we did with the book, where it's just a couple little taps trying to indicate that there are numbers on the face of this clock. And this angle would probably be too steep to really show any. So I'm just trying to tap tap, little indication of stuff going on there, where you really wouldn't be able to see the detail much. At least not from this distance. I'm grabbing a touch of Sepia. This is barely watered down. I want to help push the depth here. Doing the detail for the winding part of the clock. Now we also want to push this a little bit further. And this will help create the impression that These edges are receding further into the background. I could also come in here with just a little bit of a highlight, probably grab the bleed-proof white in a moment here. And that'll pretty much finish up the details for our pocket watch. Now, I'm working on this because today's prompt is clock, but at the same time, I don't consider this the clock of the composition. I'm really focusing on the grandfather clock for that, and that would be potentially a sticker, as long as you figure out SVGs well enough. And I don't think I have strong enough bleed-proof white on my palette right now. These seem to be going down a little bit translucent, so we'll let that dry down. We'll see where it gets to. In the meantime, I'm going to actually grab a little blob of bleed-proof white and bleed-proof white and add that back to my palette. What I've been doing is the bleed-proof white is really thick in the container. Like, it barely moves if you tip it. Like, if you left it on its side for a day, it would probably slowly pool over that way. But because it is so thick, it is recommended to go ahead and stir it when you get it, because it settles. And when it, because of that, you know, after conveniently stirring it with this toothpick, I just keep it around. So when I go ahead and stir it, I have wet pigment on the end of the toothpick, and I just go ahead and blot that on my palette. So let's see if that's showing up. You can see a good bit on the end of the toothpick. I'm just slowly moving it so it gets to in focus, hopefully. Yeah, just gonna blab that on. I've been keeping this where I keep my neutral mixes, because a lot of times I do tend to add a little bit of another pigment into the bleed-proof white to go ahead and tilt it just a little bit, because I don't want all of my highlights that I pop in to be bright white. There's moments where I do, but there's also plenty of times where it's like, this highlight needs to be a little bit green or a little bit brown. I do try to keep that a little bit varied. I've managed to go ahead and get paint on my finger. It'll be just a moment while I go ahead and blot that off, as my arms keep going in the way of the camera, sorry. I try not to just reach over in front of the camera. It's probably a little bit annoying. You'll have to let me know. If I do something annoying, let me know. I can fix it, or at least I could try. Great, so our pocket watch is looking pretty good. I definitely need to come back in with those highlights. That is not enough. So just a little bit of water on that spotter. Because that bleed-proof white is so thick right out of the container. I'm just blotting the edge of the ferrule. Make sure I don't have a big blob of water coming over here to the bleed-proof white. I want just enough that's going to make this mixable, but not to the point where it's going to make it transparent. And this is one of those times where I'm going for a strong white highlight, because with metallic surfaces, those highlights tend to have a very large amount of contrast, which helps to make them appear so shiny. Oh, I was going to dig out Marcia so you could see that. The gold on her shirt turned out amazing. She's wearing like either a gold shirt or a gold dress, and it turned out really well. So it's one of those things I'm really happy with. So at this point, with that pocket watch pretty well taken care of, we're going to move over to our grandfather clock again. And I may need to zoom out a bit. Or slide my palette out of the way so I can sit on the edge of the board here. And we're panning. Okay, so yeah, that's a lot drier than it was. I'm a lot less worried about smudging that. So I'm going to knock back. Actually, I'm going to just run the eraser over most of this. And just see where that gets me. I can see just enough detail where the pendulum was. I don't know if it shows up well enough for you guys to see it. But that's okay, you're going to see me use that where those lines are to go ahead and indicate that form. So now I'm jumping back over to the Princeton Round 1. It's also Velvet Touch. All of my Princeton brushes right now are the Velvet Touch series. I was interested in the Neptune series, but I haven't played with them so far. I'm gonna skip our RPG-esque track for today. This track is starting off really quiet, but that's okay. Something stuck on the edge of my wash here. It's making me crazy. Oh well. Anyways, moving on. I'm grabbing some of the rich green gold first. I like to go ahead and have a very green tint to my brass shadows. Or at least my brass base color even. And I just need to remember where... Yeah, that looks like that's it. There's so many odd little puddles of color here on my palette. I'm still kind of working on general memory as far as where all that sits. I'm going in with a full wash. This is actually a little bit lighter than I thought it was. That's okay, I can go ahead and glaze it. Yeah, I'm not worried about that being a little bit lighter than I intended, because I'll be able to jump around and do other detail over here in the meantime. That's because a lot of these details aren't touching the same area. So going into the sepia, I'm just going to lay in the shadows and detail some line work with that. And I probably should have grabbed the spotter brush for that bit. I'm just indicating the edges, which would be shadowed, and help to convey that form. And you know what? I think I'm also going to give this a dark edge of where that soil is going to be. Because why not? I can help visually correct it now. And I do know I'm going to use sepia in this background area too. And I'm just tapping into some water. So I'm going to blend this edge out a little bit. So I'll help it blend into the rest of the detail I do later when I bring in the rest of this background. And even more water, a little pat, and soften out this edge even further. So it's not going to be perfect, but it should blend in pretty well. I might go ahead and add that other detail. Bring this up here a little bit, around this edge a little bit. And that should work for now. Right, so visually, the clock is corrected on that edge. That's a nice straight line. I'll go ahead and lightly shadow over here. Just because I did bring that wash around. It is pretty cool already. Sorry, a little bit warm. When your paper feels cool, it's still wet. It feels a little bit warmer already on that one side. So it should be fine enough for a subtle wash of the sepia to go ahead and add some further shadows. If it does wind up being a little bit too wet and blends out this way, that's going to be okay, because like I said, I know I'm doing sepia, at least a mix containing sepia in the this area. And actually, quick double check to make sure that was light enough. Just putting this second set of legs in the background in further shadow to help push that into the background. Detailing the bottom edge of the molding and the feet. This is also still pretty thin as far as the wash is, and also pretty dry. And just tapping in those details. And the pendulum looks like it's pretty dry. Since I still have some sepia on the brush, I'm going ahead and just adding that bottom shadow under the pendulum, and a teensy bit across the top. I think that helps to convey that it's a domed shape, but the bottom is in further shadow than the top is. And just the tiniest little bit. Like, my brush is practically dry at this point, but some of that pigment might stay down. It looks like it has. So that'll help darken the top edge of the pendulum there. I really don't know more parts of the pendulum, which is why it's like, okay, well, you got the bottom part, it's kind of like a weight. I guess the top half would be like a lever, maybe? I don't know. I know some pretty simple machine terms. Like, if you know more machine terms, let me know. I would love to learn. Alright, and at this point, switching back to the neutral tint for the clock face, but I'm going to do that with our spotter. And this will be similar to what I did with the pocket watch, that we're only going to imply that there's numbers on the face. I'm seeing some drop frames here, so I do want to mention that if you're having trouble with the live stream and you want to catch the whole thing together as one big block, you can do that on YouTube at 4 o'clock Eastern Time. Every day after the stream, I go ahead and upload the videos. Ooh, I should have worn my glasses for this one. It is a little hard for me to see this far away. And just little taps here and there for some indication on where that is. I also want to try to lift off a little bit of that. I feel like I should have gone with a slightly weaker wash, because now the clock hands are standing out so much. Right now I just have water on my spotter. I'm re-wetting those clock hands and just blotting. I want to knock those back just a bit. I could also add a little bit of blue to the face as if it's encased in glass. And that'll help to go ahead and diminish it and push it further into the background as well. Which I might wind up doing. We'll do another pass. Water and blot. It still is a little bit on the bright side, as far as like, bright is the wrong word. Vivid because of the contrast is more accurate. So I'm trying one more time. Just water on the spotter. Let's sit for a second. And then blot with a paper towel. Hopefully have lifted a little bit more of that pigment up. And when I go ahead and add a little bit of blue over the top, that'll help further recede it into the background of Wonderland here. Now with the brass for the pendulum, I still have the spider, but now I'm moving on to the rich green gold. I want to lay down a little bit more of that. This mix is pretty dry right now. Just adding a bit more water. And this time with the wash, I'm leaving out a little spot to be a highlight on the pendulum, and I am glazing right over where the sepia is to help convey shadows. Just making sure that that's tilted enough to look green. And then last, I will go ahead and do... I'm debating if it's going to be a glaze of the Hansa Yellow Medium, fairly thin, or the Quinacridone Gold. Because either would work to help tone this a little bit more yellow. So my thing about brass is that it is a cooler metal tone, but it does still have some yellow to it. So the rich green gold works because it is a green leaning yellow as far as some base colors, but then it needs to be warmed up just ever so slightly. I think I'm in a pretty good spot with this grandfather clock so far, other than adding little hints of blue to indicate glass. And I think I'm going to go back into the sepia with the number 1 round. I'm going to go a little thin with the wash here. And just come in and darken this area. I don't think this is my last wash for this area. That is not enough contrast. Grabbing a bit more pigment, a little bit stronger mix. I think I'm going to come back over this with some Quinacridone Burnt Orange, just to push the golden tones a little bit better. Because the sepia is a little bit too cool for this area. Like, while it is like a warm neutral, it to me reads a little bit cool like a raw umber. It's a little bit more transparent. That's why I have it on my palette instead of a raw umber. I love the tone of raw umber, but something about the way the pigment handles for me is it feels too opaque. Like, I've tried using it in, there's a mix called raw Umber Violet. It's a mixture of Quinacridone Violet and raw umber, and the color is gorgeous. The same thing for raw umber. Like, it certainly has its place for uses, but the opacity of it, the way the pigment handles, I don't love it. I'd like to. It's one of those, this pigment has like a very long test throughout time, as far as a pigment being used for like cave paintings, Renaissance masters. They've all enjoyed it. I like the transparency and vibrancy of a lot of lab-based pigments. So a lot of quinacridones and pyrrolines on my palette. I have a pretty strong mix of the quinacridone burnt orange right now. I'm just in a debate, should I go a little bit lighter and glaze first? Yeah, so I'm going a little bit lighter. I feel like it's easier to adjust if need be. Yeah, I like that a lot more. Another amazing orange color is Bossy Red Gold. That is something I want to play with on like a limited palette type of basis, where I'm just laying down that color and just, that's it. Let it sit there. It's happy, it's doing its thing. And the reason for that is, even though it's a fantastic color, it has 4 pigments in it, so it makes it trickier to go ahead and mix with, because you're going to be more likely to have neutrals that you're not in control of. Neutrals are absolutely important on your palette, but if you can't control how they're going to lay down and the strength that they are, things like that, I don't feel like it's worth having them than having a pigment that is going to be a little bit unruly in that type of situation. If you're not going to be mixing too many colors together, I would absolutely recommend it for like a fall palette. Like letting it be a standalone color and mixing other things around it. I'm much happier with this shade of orange here, but I am going to need to mix in a bit more sepia, because this is still not as dark of a value as I think it should be. The orange certainly improves the color of it. I'll probably do another pass here, just using sepia with quinacridone burnt orange. Or I might go in with the quinacridone burnt orange and indanthrone. Just mix it up to the right value that I need. So either way, simple 2-color mixes. Even though sepia itself is already a 2-color mix. I have a random spot here. I must have splattered some paint over here. That's annoying. And you can't see it because it's off camera. Sorry about that. I'll go ahead and back up so you can see what's going on in Wonderland now. In case you joined us a little bit late. So, we have our grandfather clock pretty well settled in. We have our pocket watch finished. So the white rabbit is effectively done. I'll probably do another glaze on his jacket while I'm wrapping up and thinking of the last second things. The Knave of Hearts has been bothering me. I watched yesterday's stream, and while I was doing that, I realized that I hadn't gone back in with any black, and I wanted to include some black with him. So I just grabbed a little bit of neutral tint. And grab a paper towel to lean on. And I'm just going to do a slight indication of some black trim along the bottom of his coat. And help push the hearts theme. We're just going to do a little black heart. We're going to turn that into a repeating pattern, why not? So one part of the heart is tucked behind the fold there. Another one will be over here, and I just blob that on. There we go, that looks better. Alright, so now we have little hearts on the edge of his coat. And just a quick double check. Anything else? Do I want to include it? Yeah, I think that's good. I'm going to do a slightly thin, well, not slightly, a very much so thinner mix of the water and neutral tint. I'm just going to glaze the shoe in the background to help further push the distance between the leg that's in the foreground and this one that's in the background. And I think I went a little bit too much with the upper leg. Just pulling that back just a bit. I want it in shadow. I also want it to still be obvious that it's white. It's just in the background. And I think that's pretty good. I'm going to leave his face alone. I think I'm going to do a lot of the faces off camera. And that's just because of not being as close as I'd like to be able to put in those little details. The queen's face was fairly large, so at least by comparison for some of these background characters, like, or not specifically background characters, because Alice is a main character, but meaning figures that are further in the background. I need to go ahead and do some more details on the caterpillar, to go ahead and give his hookah a hose to go ahead and connect the mouthpiece part to the rest of the hookah. The Tweedles, Alice, our Knave of Hearts here, all of those are far enough in the background that I'll probably just do those details off camera in the next day or so. And then, yeah, that's pretty much it. I could actually do... We have a whole minute left. Grabbing a little bit of Quinacridone Coral, I think is this one. Yeah, that's Quinacridone Coral. I'm going to give this a quick bit of shading down at the bottom. I feel like it's been too light there. I've been unhappy with that for a couple days, so let's blot. Very gently moving it up the surface of the cake. Lots more blotting. And softening that edge. Bring it around so it gives the cake a round form. And one more time. That should be a bit better. Alright. So, we'll see more details as we keep going. Glad that we were able to hop around a little bit and get caught up there. And let me know what are some Wonderland locations that you'd like to see on the signpost. The signpost is not one of our specific prompts for this challenge, but I really love having the signpost present in Wonderland. I think it adds a unique bit of character, and it helps to visually anchor these disparate locations that I've pushed together into this composition. Right, and again, tomorrow's prompt is roses. So we will see the rest of this vine taking form while I go ahead and paint the roses. I'm debating leaving them white and maybe having the red roses back here on the hedgerow. But let me know if you have any thoughts, if we should mix them up and having red or white. Well, it's been a wonderful day. Excuse me. So sorry about that. So I had to get a little bit of drink for my throat, which decided that it wanted to go ahead and tighten up there. So I'm so sorry about that. So I do want to go ahead and say thank you so much for joining me. And I will see you tomorrow for our prompt of roses. And as always, keep painting.